You're listening to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast covering the wild world of college football. On tap for today are hot takes, controversy, and analysis on your favorite team. Here's your host, Hampton Sipper, in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back in to the Pigskin Cafe, and it is me, Hampton Sipper, the actual host of this podcast for the first time this year, so that the intro lines up with the actual video. We're missing our good compatriot Chase Haney tonight, but I got Graham here joining me. Graham, how we doing tonight, man?
Doing good. Glad to know that the intro is going to match up with what is actually going to come out of the podcast. There's been a lot of flack, getting a lot of flack behind it. Got to correct it. We'll be better for it. So glad to be with you tonight, Hampton. Hate Chase isn't with us, but hey, it's just we're gonna tag team it. We're gonna knock out some college football games, which is what we love to do, regardless of who's here.
Absolutely. Before we get into the video, before we recap week 2, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, hit that notification bell so whenever any of our videos go live that you will be up to date and notified. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter, on our social media accounts at the Pigskin Cafe, and we'd love to interact with you there. Now, Graham, let's just get right into it, man. So, full disclosure, everybody, I went to the Alabama-Texas game this weekend. Big mistake. I'm just kidding. Still a good time, even though the result was not what we envisioned and what we had hoped for. So I did not get to watch a lot of other college football games. Kept up with a few scores like Texas A&M and Miami, watched Colorado, watched Troy a little bit against Kansas State. So I kind of want to defer to you here, Graham. Tell me maybe a few general observations that you made after the week 2 slate.
Yeah, I think the first thing has to be, and we'll talk about it more later, that Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. I think that for a lot of time, there's been a lot of hate that's gone around him of his ability to pass the ball downfield, and he showed that he could do that plenty fine against Alabama. I think another one is I'm not going to say that Colorado is legit, but Colorado is living up to the hype. I think that they are getting a lot of noise going out to Boulder and a lot of just lights and publicity going on in that program, and as of now, as of week 2, they have not skipped a beat. They really put it to a Nebraska team that is definitely rebuilding under Matt Rule, but we thought their defense was a little bit better than it was, but Colorado really took off at the end. Shedeur Sanders is a legit quarterback. If he keeps playing like this, he's going to work his way into a top 10 pick in the NFL coming year. I mean, I think that there's so many other playmakers. We talked about them with Colorado, but to me, Shedeur Sanders was the highlight of the show. Like ability to, do 2 weeks in a row of just efficiency and just timely throws and making good reads. I think that is very important for college quarterbacks, especially transitioning to the NFL. And it was good to see that the Colorado students were able to rush the field. Whenever there's times where it seems like the program has been down and out the past few years, at least there's a little bit of life in there now. And then you mentioned it, Troy and Kansas State, since we're both Troy alumni, that was a tough defeat as well. State is legit on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They returned all 5 offensive linemen from last year's team. And, I mean, I think that just a really solid team. It's going to be hard to beat in the Big 12. Their quarterbacks made good decisions, too, and he's a good playmaker, had several rushing
touchdowns for Will Howard.
Yeah, had a great game. And then my last thing, and it'll, I guess, probably turn into our conversation, which is next, is what is wrong with Texas A&M? I mean, Miami came to play, and Mario Cristobal was getting a lot of heat for the way they performed last year, although it was their first year, so maybe looking back, he should have been given a little bit more grace, knowing that he took over a program that was not as good as what he had at Oregon, but has probably a higher upside. But, man, if you look at the stats of this game, especially offensively, it doesn't make sense why Texas A&M didn't win this game. Because when you look at based off of the number of plays, the time of possession, yardage, Texas A&M at least was, in yardage wise, they had a little bit less than Miami, but had almost 30 more plays than Miami did on offense.
Oh, wow.
Converted twice the amount of third downs that Miami did, but they did have 2 turnovers. They did have 2 interceptions that were thrown by Connor Weigman. I
Mm-hmm.
think is something wrong with A&M? I mean, yes, there definitely could be. I think the offense probably wasn't as big of a problem. That defense under DJ Durkin is suspect for sure. I feel like last week in the pod we were talking about Tyler Van Dyke and how he'd pretty much fallen from grace. But
Mm-hmm.
man, he had a great game. He threw for 5 touchdowns. Let me look at the official stats. He had 374 yards, completed 21 of 30 passes, and 5 touchdowns. That is incredible. Great efficiency by Tyler Van Dyke.
Absolutely.
I just want to go through just a little bit of the stats of the game because of how efficient Miami was on offense, which I think is so just undervalued in today's time. I think like I said, number of plays is so important, but it's what you do with those plays that matters so much. Miami had 451 total yards, had 374 of that in the air, averaged 8.4 yards a play compared to 5.3 yards. I mean, that's almost a first down every play.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M had 26 first downs. Miami had 16. 10 first down differences. But here's the big kicker. Third down efficiency. A&M was 8 for 18, so almost 50%. Miami only had 9 third downs and converted 3 of them. So, I mean, just completely less, had 4 total plays and only had 3 punts. And they had more penalty yards. So, I mean, when you look at the stats, Texas A&M should have won this game. But Miami's offense being efficient and executing big plays really was the deciding factor and ends up, making the decision a 15-point game. And if you watch the game, it was very close throughout. But
Mm-hmm.
A&M continues to disappoint their fan base, disappoint college football fans, especially for what their ceiling should be, and now they're unranked. So big disappointment for A&M with all this going into that program, and the result of that is not adding up. So, man, I know you didn't watch this game, but I know you've seen a little bit of highlights and you've heard me talk a little bit about the statistics. What happened? I mean, Miami scoring 48 points on Texas A&M's defense has to raise the alarm bells for what Texas A&M is going to face looking forward this season.
Well, we kind of talked going into the year that A&M last year, they struggled to run the ball. They struggled to stop the run. Well, they didn't run the ball very well against Miami. They put a lot on Connor Weigman.
Yep.
And he played pretty good overall. I mean, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the 2 picks were critical.
Yes.
They also gave up a special teams touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, Graham, like you said, you were being kind to DJ Durkin in that defense. Tyler Van Dyke is a good player. He's a solid college quarterback, but they made him look like Joe Montana. I mean, they made that offense look like prime Miami in the 2000s or the 1980s. And there's no excuse for that. I mean, especially like on that last touchdown, I mean, that was peewee stuff. Like their players running into one another and letting the guy score for the go-ahead touchdown to really cement the win. I mean, if I'm an A&M fan, I am very concerned because offensively, your pass game was pretty prolific, but you're still having, that problem running the ball. But then you got Jimbo Fisher. Apparently, he came out and accused Miami of simulating snap counts and everything. So instead of taking accountability, let's blame the other team, which I'm never for a coach making excuses like that, especially someone with his track record of running his mouth last year before the year and then going 5-7. I mean, if I'm A&M, you've already lost one after a very disappointing year last year. It doesn't get any easier from here. Not in the SEC West, even though, which I think is a takeaway in the first 2 weeks, the SEC is struggling this year a little bit.
Definitely.
And I don't think that's an overreaction. That's just kind of fact. I mean, in head-to-head matchups with other conferences, the SEC hadn't shown up.
Mm-hmm.
But A&M's got a lot of fits, especially defensively. But credit to Miami, like you mentioned, Mario Cristobal is getting that talent in there, and it's paying off a little bit in year two. Now, it's all about sustainability, and it's all about we really don't know how good Texas A&M is. This looks really impressive right now, but we could get to the end of the year, and it's like last year where Texas A&M is a 5-win football team. Now, I don't foresee that happening. I think Texas A&M will get it together and be a little more solid down the road, but good win for Miami. A lot of soul searching to do in College Station. And before we kind of transition to the marquee game of the weekend, I did want to give credit to Ole Miss for battling. I mean, Tulane with their backup quarterback gave Ole Miss all they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
All they wanted and more, but Ole Miss kind of kept in there. Their defense made a couple big plays, and they ended up pulling away at the end. But that was a hard-fought game for the majority of it. For the few glimpses that I got to see, because I was traveling and was at the game and really wasn't paying attention, but very interesting, very gutsy effort by Tulane. Before we kind of head on to Bama, Texas, you got anything else to add about week 2, Graham, overall?
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and throw my biggest takeaway so far in there, and it's going to be Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, the way they played the past 3 weeks, I mean, they've had 2 subpar opponents and they played NC State, but it was a tough game on the road. I think Notre Dame is going to end up in the college football playoff. Sam Hartman is a legit quarterback. He has really, just helped Notre Dame take the next step. They've, in the past done a great job running the football. They have a great, I think their left tackle is the top-rated tackle in the next class. So I think that Sam Hartman and a good offensive line could be dangerous. I think another thing is the top of the Big Ten. Who do we think is going to be the top dog there? I mean, it comes down to Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. There's a lot of noise around Ohio State's quarterback, Kyle McCord. Is he really going to be the guy? And Michigan without Jim Harbaugh right now is still playing well, but Michigan always has a really easy front schedule.
Very.
I guess my sort of takeaway from that, Penn State's the best team in the Big Ten. I think those are kind of my
I agree with you.
Through 2 weeks, and I don't feel like either of them are really hot takes, but I feel like those are based off observations, my predictions for how the season will play out. I think those are 2 things that at least I would like to see come true, and I think that there's a good shot at it.
I agree with you on your Penn State point. They have looked very impressive. Granted, they haven't played stiff competition yet, but they've got a guy at quarterback in Drew Aller that they have not had under James Franklin. Shout out Sean Clifford. You were there 18 years, and he won a lot of games for him, but he was not a difference maker at that position. Drew Aller is a difference maker at that position. So I'm with you, Graham, on Penn State. And on Notre Dame, I'm not all the way of they're going to be in the college football playoff, but I'll tell you this right now. They're beating Ohio State next week.
Yeah.
It's at home. Last year, they kind of kept it close with a limited offense, per se. I believe with Sam Hartman at the helm, the way they run the ball, their offensive line, and Marcus Freeman in year 2, I believe that's going to be his first big statement win. I know he beat Clemson last year, and that was a shock to everybody. And I mean, they kind of dominated Clemson. But I believe beating Ohio State at home is going to put the world on notice that this isn't your average Notre Dame team. I think this one's a little bit different. So I'm glad we're aligned on that. I'm very impressed with what I've seen so far from them.
Yeah, and then later on in the year they play USC at home. So
that's going to be fun.
2 top 10 opponents that they both play at home. I think that's very, very important for Notre Dame. I think that's why I've kind of given Notre Dame the nod of making it into the college football playoff. They're playing their toughest games at home, which definitely helps a lot.
Absolutely. And I know, last point on Notre Dame, I know your casual college football fan will always say, well, Notre Dame doesn't play anybody. They play a pretty difficult schedule this year. It's not full of cupcakes. I mean, they've got a tough road if they want to make it to the playoff. which I think in the long term benefits them. Playing that tougher competition, having, iron sharpens iron. I believe that will help them if they do get into the college football playoff and not get blown out like they have in years past. So I'm with you on Notre Dame. I'm very interested to see them next week when they take on Ohio State. Well, Graham, loved the week 2 little recap. Let's get into the moratorium on the Alabama-Texas game. And if you don't mind, I kind of thought all day, that meme on Twitter where it's like Woody holding back little Bo Peep and it says, hold up, let him cook.
Yeah.
I need to cook him. I need to cook a minute.
Go for it.
I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. And I want to put this disclosure out there too. I love all the kids on Alabama's football team as an Alabama fan. I support them. I want them to do well, and I want them to improve. But being part of a podcast, we have to give our fair critique when there is something that is going wrong, when play is not up to the standard that Alabama fans expect, that Nick Saban expects. And so I want to preface all that because I don't want to get into just bashing a player and it come across as me being, your average message board poster who says, this dude sucks, get him off the team. I don't want to come across as that. But I will say, Graham, I'm gonna go a little bit and then we'll kick it to you. But anytime in the middle of when I'm talking, if you feel like I need to expand on something or you want to add to, feel free to jump in because I think that's going to be a really good conversation. But to set the scene, of course, I was at the game on Saturday night. Incredible atmosphere. Ton of great people there. I got to shake hands with Josh Pate. That was really cool. Shout out to him. I got to take a picture of Marcel Darius with a family that I believe he knew in Tuscaloosa. Got to see Dante Hightower, Jahmyr Gibbs, bunch of former Alabama players. It was really cool. Really great atmosphere for college football. It's kind of what the sport is about. And that was the highlight of the day, was really the lead up to the game, because when the game started, Texas gets the ball, they move a little bit, but then Alabama stiffens up on defense. Thought came out with a lot of intensity, a lot of energy. The pads were popping, man, and I felt good. I felt really good. Then Alabama got the ball. I felt really good with the first few plays. They were getting a ton of push on that Texas defensive line, which you won't hear from a lot of message boards or other analysts who just say, oh, Alabama's offensive line got their butt whooped. Early on, they were mauling that Texas defensive line. They were. But then the first interception happens. And there was like a collective, not out of the stadium, but like it changed the entire game. The first interception, and I think it changed it for Jalen Milroe, but also changed how Tommy Rees had to call the game a little bit, because that was just not. I get that the corner kind of came in from another zone, but he stared down Jermaine Burton, and when you stare down a guy like that and you premeditate your throw, it's not going to lead to a good result most of the time. So when that happened, the game kind of changed. And before I dive into like the issues that Alabama has, and there are issues that they have that they've got to get corrected, I do want to give a ton of credit to Texas. I was very impressed with their offensive line, the job they did. Of course, I'm not shocked that Sarkisian came up with a good game plan. I am not shocked that Quinn Ewers, who can't throw a deep ball against anybody else except Alabama, was money on every throw. It felt like every throw he made deep against Alabama on Saturday night. I mean, that moon ball that he threw to Xavier Worthy was like right in front of my seat. It was it was gorgeous. I mean, it was just a great job by Sark to get Xavier Worthy lined up on the freshman Caleb Downs. I mean, that's just taking advantage of matchups, getting your guy a score. And defensively, their D-line played really, really well. They did get the better of Alabama's offensive line a good bit of the night. They did. They were very disruptive, not only in their run defense, but also getting after the passer. Did a really good job. Had a good game plan on the back end, too. And this is rare for an Alabama team, but they came into Bryant-Denny. They ended with the ball. And they kneeled and ran out the clock. I mean, that does not happen. That's very rare in the Nick Saban era. And credit to them. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond from here. Because I'll tell you this much. Their fans and that team celebrated like that was a national championship. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I get it. You hadn't beat Alabama in a long time. You haven't been relevant in a long time. So I get it, but I'm very interested to see how you bounce back if you have a little bit of a letdown any part during the year, because with the talent they have, they should win Big 12, no problem. No problem at all. So shout out Texas. Great job, great game plan, and you out-executed and you beat Alabama. Okay? Now let's get to Alabama. I've seen a ton of tapes about, this team doesn't have it. This team is going to win lose 3 or 4 more games. And I think after every loss, there's a little bit of an overreaction by fans. That is just natural. That's what happens. And being at the game, you have a little bit different perspective because you see the plays that are there, the plays that are not being made, because you can see the entire field, where on broadcast you're kind of limited, even though you get replays and everything. And upon rewatch, I actually feel better about the performance by much of the team on Saturday night. Let's start with the defense, because I feel like the offense is going to be a lot of the talking point, as it should be. I'm dang proud of that defense. Dang proud of them. And what I mean by that is the first 3 quarters were the reason Alabama hung in that game. Okay? Because the offense was doing nothing, and that defense got put in crap position after crap position, and they kept coming through. Does that mean they were perfect? Does that mean that there are things that they don't need to work on? Absolutely not. They got to generate more pass rush. With a guy like Dallas Turner and a guy like Chris Braswell to have 0 sacks is really inexcusable.
Yep.
Okay? Quinn Ewers was under pressure a few times, and guess what? When he made a few errant throws. But for most of the night, he didn't have pressure in his face. The pocket wasn't crowded around him, and he was able to stand in there and deliver accurate balls down the field. Okay? The D-line, excellent in run support. Excellent. Tim Keenan, Justin Boydby, Jaheim Otis, they all did a good job in run support. They offered hardly anything as pass rushers. That's a problem. That is a problem. You have to have the ability to push the pocket, push the interior back on the quarterback. That way he has to move, and that gives you more opportunity for your edge guys to get him down to the ground. So that has to be corrected. There has to be some adjustments in the back end, too. There were some miscommunications. There were some busted coverages. Caleb Downs, going to be a great player. Made some great plays in the game, especially in run support. He also busted a few coverages. He's a freshman. Sark knew that. He took advantage of that, and that is what good play callers do. So they've got to get that type of stuff short up, but I do want to give a shout out to a couple guys who I thought played a really good game. Malachi Moore was all over the field, man, on Saturday. I was really impressed with his performance, not only as a run defender coming up and run support and laying the lumber on Jatavian Sanders, and that should have been a fumble, by the way. I know it was ruled incomplete. That was an absolute catch then fumble. Played great in coverage, and I thought Deontay Lawson had another good game. I don't know if he had the same impact that he had against Middle Tennessee State, but I still thought he did really good in run support. Dallas Turner didn't do a whole lot much of the night, especially as a pass rusher, but the play he made on 4th and 2 to prevent Texas from getting a first down, he was out of position, runs over, gets set, blows up Jatavion Sanders, and then keeps the back from going across the first down mark. Incredible play, incredible effort. And I thought they played with good energy and intensity throughout, but in the fourth quarter when it was money time, they gave up 21 points. Now, I don't put 7 of those points on them. We'll get to that in a minute. But they still did not rise to the occasion. And I think part of that was, like I mentioned earlier, when you're on the field over and over and over and over again, and you're putting bad position after bad position, against an offense like that, you were going to wear down. It's just a fact. I mean, this defense is going to, they're young, especially in the secondary. And what I mean by young, there are a few guys back there that haven't played a lot of ball at Alabama within the same unit. So Texas was going to make plays, but the game would have been totally different if there was a lead. If Alabama was playing with a lead and you kind of get to impose your will a little bit more instead of constantly just having to fight and scrape and tooth and claw to keep it a close game. So those are my defensive notes. Proud with the effort for the most part. Got to be better in the fourth quarter. Got to be better with your assignments and not busting coverages. And you got to get pressure on the quarterback. That is an absolute must.
Yeah, hey, just since you just covered the defense, let me just add just a point or two, and then we can switch over to the offense. I think from my eyes, I think you did a good job covering defensive schematics and how the game turned out. To me, the biggest defensive blunders that we had just happened to be whenever we would force Texas to have to make long drives, and we pinned them back, pinned them deep in their own red zone, and well, I guess anyway, deep in, near their goal line, have to drive 95, 96 yards, and what happens? First play, we get a face mask, and then they get it out. I feel like so often whenever we were giving our defense a good position to be in, there was also times they did shoot themselves in the foot. That, like I said, that face mask by Boygby, I think that was so crucial because Texas, I'm pretty sure Texas went on to drive the whole field and score a touchdown on that play.
They did.
On that drive. And, to me, that's just so important of when we get them, pinned back, we've got to force their hand. We can't give them any easy outs. And I think that, that a face mask is something that, sometimes your hand just is in the wrong spot, but, the timely penalties, just when we have those, I think it's so important. And that kind of plays into offense too of, a first down penalty is a whole lot different than a third down penalty whenever it's time to convert. So I think to me that was a big thing of whenever we have them pinned back deep, we've got to be able to, force them to make tough decisions where they have to run or throw it. And, I think the play after that, they might have thrown it for, 30 yards or something like that and really just flip fields on that. So I think that was just my biggest defensive takeaway and just concern of us getting sacks. I think that for the amount of times that Quinn Ewers was in the pocket, yeah, he did get rid of the ball fast majority of the throws, but there were times that we had opportunities to get back there and we did not force our way back there. So I think that's something that has to be fixed. There are obviously times that, a defender's going to get burned or the scheme is just going to line up perfect. That's what Sarkisian does a great job of drawing up plays that, just what the defense is going to do and drawing up the play that works every time. I think that our defense, at times, we have to be able to respond when we get punched in the mouth. And there were the first 3 quarters, we did a great job. We were punched in the mouth and then block it in. And then that fourth quarter, we punched in the mouth and we kind of backed down. And that was kind of concerning. But yeah, Hampton, I'll let you go ahead and take us onto the offense. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Jalen Milroe and his performance.
I think you might be right, Graham. I think you might be onto something. Last note on the defense, you covered it perfect. I'm glad the point about penalties at bad times, whether it be face mask or pass interference, definitely hampered their ability to be effective at times during the game. But one thing I would like to see going forward they did bring simulated pressure some, but there was too much just rushing for and expecting to get back there. And when they're not getting home, you've got to bring more people and commit more people, into blitzing to affect the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was lacking. Not saying we didn't do it at all, because we did. And sometimes when we did, we got burnt for it because we didn't cover it correctly on the back end, where the spot was vacated. So I would like to see a little bit more of that going forward. And another factor that I think played a little bit into kind of maybe the rustiness of the secondary, Jalen Key and Malachi Moore did not practice hardly at all last week.
Yeah.
And in a game like that, you need everybody on the same page, everybody in sync together. So great points on the defense. Let's switch over to the offense, which is where I think it gets harrowing and interesting. So I know there have been a lot of people complaining about the offensive line. There have been people complaining about Tommy Rees. And before we get into the negatives, I do want to shout out a couple people, specifically a unit that I thought played really well, and that was the wide receivers, man.
Yeah.
Shout out Holman Wiggins, who gets, to me, way too much hate for no reason for last year when he had a bunch of freshmen in the room and had a couple guys that still were developing, and he gets, unnecessary hate for that. This guys came to play Saturday night. Malik Benson made an incredible catch in traffic. Jermaine Burton was getting open all night long, like Lionel Richie style.
Mm-hmm.
He made a contested catch. Isaiah Bond is turning into a dude that can consistently get open, can consistently threaten the defense vertically. I was really impressed with that group. Very impressed. I thought they played well. If anybody got a positive grade on offense, it was them. Now let's get to the negative. And we'll start with the offensive line, and then we'll end with kind of the quarterback, because that's, to me, and I know this is unpopular to say because everybody in a loss takes blame. No doubt. Coaches, players, everybody alike. But the crux of Alabama's offensive issues start and end with the quarterback, in my humble opinion. The offensive line did get beat a few times on Saturday night in pass pro, and sometimes it absolutely was ugly. But as I mentioned earlier in the game, when they started out, they ran the ball pretty effectively. They got and generated good push. But Texas started to adjust. They started to send more run blitzes. They committed a few more guys to the box. Okay? Now, you may ask yourself, why did they do that? Because they did not respect Alabama's ability to make them pay for that.
Yep.
And when you stack the box, when you're constantly run blitzing, that makes it very difficult on your offensive line. I don't care how big they are. And that's why they ran it very effectively until they made that adjustment. Okay? In pass protection, there were a couple times, like I said, Caden Proctor just got straight up beat.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, your quarterback did not help them out. And what I mean by that is, as a quarterback, running outside of the tackle all the doggone time does not help your offensive line. If a speed rusher is coming upfield and your tackle pushes them upfield, as a quarterback, you're supposed to step up into the pocket. You're supposed to navigate the pocket. And I know Jalen Milroe was a very mobile guy, but his pocket movement and his pocket presence is subpar.
Yep.
And that's me putting it kindly. But that makes the offensive line look way worse than it is. And then when he's constantly taking off running, that causes holding penalties because the defender is having his eye on the quarterback and he's seeing him take off and he's trying to get away. Well, the offensive lineman don't know where in the world he is, where the quarterback is, because he's not in the pocket. And there were plenty of times throughout the game where Jalen Milroe had a clean pocket, and if his first read was not there, and do not misconstrue me and say that he never went through all of it, he never went through his progressions, or he never didn't stand in there and just drop his eyes. But consistently, if the first read wasn't there, he would drop his eyes and look to run. That is a fact, Jack. And I know a lot of people don't want to say that because they want to defend the kid. And I love Jalen Milroe. He is a great kid. He is a great leader. But these are just facts. These are just facts of what I saw in the game. And so that makes your offensive line look worse than they were. So I have all the confidence in the world that they're going to get it fixed. Caden Proctor had a bad game. He's a freshman. I give him a little bit of grace. He'll learn from it. I have no doubt he'll be better. And by the end of the year, probably toward the middle of the year, that group is going to be really scary. And they're going to be able to maul folks if there's a quarterback change, in my opinion. Running backs, I thought they were all right. I thought sometimes they had a hole and they were too east and west where they need to get north and south. I'd like to see a little more Jam Miller. I think he gives them something different that Roydell and Jace do not, especially Roydell. I want to see Justice Haynes more too. But we get to the quarterback. I've already mentioned it with offensive line. But it's not just the offensive line. There were guys open on Saturday. And either Jalen Milroe did not throw the ball to them, or he was inaccurate with the ball. And everyone gets so caught up in what the big plays that Jalen Milroe can make. But what did we talk about before the year with Joe Milton? Who did I compare him to? Anthony Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Where, as a quarterback, you judge them not by their highlight plays. You judge them by play in and play out. And Jalen Milroe plays quarterback like a slugger in the MLB. He'll hit a home run, but then he'll strike out 9 times after that. And then he'll hit another home run. As an offense, and especially the way that this team is built and has to be, because we don't have a Bryce Young or Tua or a Mack at quarterback, that cannot work. You have to be efficient. You have to take the plays that are there. And Jalen Milroe did not do that on Saturday. Y'all, I mean, I know people complain about Tommy Reese. The only thing that I could say, Tommy, I would like for you to do better is maybe call a few bubble screens, a few little quicker, shorter passes, maybe to get him in a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem. He schemed up 3 touchdowns for Jalen Milroe. 3. The wheel to Roydell Williams that he hit him, but he hit him on his back shoulder and didn't lead him upfield. If he leads him upfield, it's a touchdown, or at the very least, they're in the red zone with opportunity to score before half. Okay?
Yep.
Then Isaiah Bond, third quarter, first drive, has this guy beat by 3 or 4 yards. He gets the ball to him, but Isaiah Bond has to completely turn around, catch it on his back. He hits him in stride, another touchdown. But then the worst miss of them all was Jason McClellan. Beautifully, again, another wheel route. He's open 2 or 3 yards. All you have to do is loft it up to him, put plenty of air under it,
Let him run
under and catch it. And he overthrows him.
Yep.
And people want to blame, well, the offensive coordinator needs to make it easier on him and doesn't need to make him a drop back passer. Bull. Can he do some things like maybe call a few more quarterback runs, maybe call a few of those screens to help him out a little bit more? Sure, but he delivered 3 plays, and the deep ball is supposed to be his specialty as a passer. He delivered those 3 plays, and he delivered more too. There were other guys running up in that game, and he did not capitalize. Okay? And that affects the offense. You can't be efficient offensively, and it's like calling plays with a hand tied behind your back. And even on some of the RPOs that everyone's like, oh, he didn't call. There were a couple instances where they called RPO. He didn't make the right read. He pulled it when he shouldn't have pulled it. Or he didn't pull it when he should have. There was one play in the first quarter after he threw the pick, and Alabama said, we're not letting you throw again. We're running it 7 or 8 times. I may be wrong, but from the TV, it looked like he checked into a run, and it was an 8-man box.
Yep.
You got to check out of that, brother. And he has the ability to. I'm saying that because of what Saban said after the Middle Tennessee State game where they should have called out of a run play where there was a blitz coming to that side and he didn't do it.
Yep.
Well, you got to do that in that instance. And the frustrating thing about that game is there were plays out there for Alabama to be made. And if there's a quarterback that just makes simple, not even the outstanding plays, and Jalen Milroe can deliver outstanding plays, but just hit the singles that are right there. And if Alabama hits those plays that are just the routine, they win that game. Mm-hmm. Even with the penalties that need to be addressed, even with the snap issues that need to be addressed, Alabama wins that game with just simple execution and not basically throwing 2 pick sixes, which is pretty much what Jalen Milroe did. I mean, the second pick was somehow worse than the first pick. I mean, he literally stared down Burton, patted, and the guy read his eyes because he predetermined where he wanted to go. And this is what I'll end on. And again, Graham, I'll kick it over to you, man, because I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this. Because everyone keeps saying Reese has to do better for Milroe, and Milroe has all these tools, and he's going to improve. Okay? And I got suckered last week by the Middle Tennessee State game because I was like, all right, let's go behind this kid. He's improved, and he has shown improvement. He really had. He stayed in the pocket in the Middle Tennessee State game. He went through his reads better. He was more accurate with the football. He was. But then against Texas, it went the other way. I mean, he went back to old habits. And it's 2 offensive coordinators, and he started 3 games. And Jalen Milroe against Texas A&M and Jalen Milroe against Texas are 2 of the worst quarterback performances of the Saban era. I love the kid. I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he's got great leadership ability. But again, and he may start against South Florida, and he'll look like $1 million. But against top flight competition, he simply is not ready, in my humble opinion. That doesn't mean he can never get ready for it. I'm not going to put that on the kid. But right now, he is not ready. And if Alabama does not have time for him to develop. They've got talent to win games. You've got to make a switch. Again, I know we haven't seen Tyler Buckner in Alabama uniform in meaningful action. You got to try something because you cannot win. We will lose 2 or 3 more games if he plays like that in some other key matchups throughout the year. I know that's tough, but it's just the truth. Graham, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that I think the biggest point that you made and that I totally agree with is the scrutiny that's going on Tommy Reese right now is not saying totally unwarranted because he could call more run plays to help set up Milroe a little bit better, call some some screens, a little bit of easier throws to get him set up with. But at the end of the day, the offensive coordinator has to look at numbers and matchups and say, when this happened, when they showed an 8-man box and we had one-on-one coverage on the outside, or we had a linebacker covering a running back in space, did we make the right call? Yes. Was it executed? No. And I think that's the big takeaway. You look at what Texas did. Texas executed those big plays whenever it was that 50-yard bomb from 80,000 feet that Ewers threw. It was right on the money and it worked. And the times that we threw the bomb, we overthrew them, we underthrew them, we did not make the play. And I think that's just really important. I think that just adding on to Jalen Milroe, since that's kind of what the last things you've been talking about. The problem really wasn't the turnover to me. It's, again, the timely turnover. It's when he made the interception. Texas had just driven the field and scored a touchdown, and Alabama was looking to respond, and he throws an interception, and that's 2 touchdowns within 3 minutes that Texas scored. So
30 seconds of game time. Yeah.
You wear out the defense. You put them in such a back them up so much that, I mean, a win right there is a field goal, and it was just so tough to put them in that situation, especially when like I said earlier, Texas threw some punches. Alabama had to respond early in the game. We responded well. At the end of the game, the fourth quarter came. Texas scored a touchdown. They punched us. How are we going to respond? We get a few plays, and then Milroe turns the ball over, and that is just like another gut punch. That's like
Yeah.
the the southpaw uppercut. I think that was just one of those that it hurt just so bad. It was just such perfectly placed, perfectly timed that it really just knocked Alabama out of the game, and really just the the hill at that point was just too high to climb, and we were just down and out after that. So I think that at the end of the game, I don't think you can throw Buckner in with 2 minutes left and expect anything really different to happen. So there's a lot of people calling for Saban to put Buckner in after that, and I get it. Milroe did not play very well, but especially at the end, like you at least got to hope that Milroe responds because this with the ceiling for Milroe is substantially higher than Simpson and a Buckner. I think the floor on Buckner and Simpson is higher, but whenever you're down by 10 points, you have to have high ceiling because you need 2 touchdowns in 2 minutes. And so I think that was kind of the takeaway that I had. It'll be interesting to see how Milroe responds this week against South Florida. You would definitely a different opponent because Texas is an elite team this year. South Florida is not, but you're going on the road, so at least there'll be a little bit of pressure on you in that sense. Hampton, I want to just bring back to the offensive line just a little bit. I think that so oftentimes, whenever we look across the board, offensive linemen are judged by the 3 plays that they mess up. Caden Proctor is judged on the I can't tell you how many sacks he gave up, but the big plays where the guy got around the edge and he got beat and Milroe got sacked. That's what he's judged on, not the 58 other plays when he did. He might not have done a great job on the other plays, but he did good enough on many of the other ones. And so that's something the offensive line does. They don't really get much credit when they do well, but they get a lot of heat when they do bad. And there was definitely reasons to complain when they had times that they got beat. But it was just like everything. It was just one of those games that everything went right for Texas and everything went wrong for Alabama. And that is not an excuse. That is just an observation of what happens. Texas goes up for a quarterback sneak, snaps it through Ewers' legs. Whether it was intentional or not, I think it might have been intentional. I think there was a guy behind Ewers that maybe was supposed to make that snap, but it goes all off of Ewers into the pile. And what happens? Texas picks it up and scoots around the edge for a first down. I mean, you just kind of look at it. The plays that need to be made, Texas made, and the plays that need to be made, Alabama didn't. And at the end of the day, that was the result of the game. Was Texas executed, Alabama did not, and man, it's just a tough pill to swallow. Texas is a good team. I think that this is the best team they've had in several years.
Oh yeah.
If Ewers plays like he did against Alabama, that kid's going to win the Heisman Trophy. I mean, you can't deny the fact that Texas has so much love and respect in the media. And if he keeps playing like that, he will win the Heisman Trophy and might even work his way into the top pick. I know right now it's Caleb Williams slated there. But, if he plays like that, Texas is going to be hard to beat, and Quinn Ewers will win the Heisman. I'm not predicting they will because I think that he will regress to the mean.
Yeah.
He definitely will. But the Big 12 schedule favors Texas a lot. The ranked teams that you have going forward are who is it? It's
Oklahoma.
You have Kansas State, and that's it. You don't play.
Yeah, I know.
You play BYU this year, but you don't play Utah or anything like that. But yeah, you got Oklahoma. You got Oklahoma in the Red River Showdown, and then you got Kansas State at home. So Texas really has their schedule favorable looking forward. Alabama got to respond. Got to show up against South Florida and really just seem dominant, like you were at Tennessee State, which you should have. You've already cut out all the opportunity and the room for error. You've lost your game. You lose again, you're out of the playoff. You lose twice, you're not going to win the West. So I think that is that's the story, and we've got to just see how Alabama responds. So Hampton, I thought you did a great job of covering all the topics. I think that you being there, able to see all of that, was very helpful. So I guess let's move into the final part of the show, just talking about the week going forward.
Absolutely. I'm with you, Graham. Going to be interesting to see how they respond. And a lot of players, a lot of former players are talking about we've got to get back to the Bama standard and we've got to impose our mentality. I'm tired of the talk. Show me. And Saban said that tonight. There's so much talk about playing to the standard instead of just doing it. And that's what I want to see on Saturday is everybody playing with the relentless effort, toughness, and physicality from snap one to the last whistle. That is what I want. And I want a quarterback change. And I think there's going to be one. He may not start the game, but I think Buckner is going to be
The leash is
an integral part.
for Milroe. The leash is very short.
Very short, because you can't have a feast or famine offense, which is what it is right now. And look, if Buckner doesn't work out, the whole thing with Ty Simpson has been, well, he makes an error and then it kind of goes down. Well, that excuse doesn't work for me anymore after what I saw on Saturday. And I can't, as an Alabama fan, Lord, please don't let me have to witness another offensive performance like that, like the one I watched at Texas A&M or when we played A&M last year. I was in attendance for both. It's miserable to watch an offense be that ineffective. Let's go on. Let's turn the page. Go to week 3. We're going to go rapid fire here because we spent a lot of time doing Bama Texas talk. So quickly, LSU visiting Starkville. Who you got, Graham?
I got LSU in a close one. I think, this past week, Mississippi State played really, really close against Arizona. I think Arizona's a little bit to give them credit for, but Arizona's not LSU standard. I think that LSU, they responded well against Grambling, which obviously they should have, but I think that it kind of lit a fire in them after getting demolished by Florida State. Going on the road, a good road test after going to Orlando. I think that LSU wins this one, but in a close one for sure.
I'm going to go with the upset here.
Oh,
I'm going to go with Mississippi State at home. This game is always a weird game. It's always close. And I think this year, with it being at home, it being an 11 a.m. kick, and Mississippi State being a little different type of team this year, they're not an air raid team.
Run first. Yeah, run first.
Run first team. I don't know, man. It has a little bit of an upset feeling with there not being many marquee matchups this week. This is the type of game that kind of catches my eye. Give me the Bulldogs in a close one. Now we'll go on to Georgia versus South Carolina. Let's just say resoundingly, do we think Georgia's going to win this game? I do. Do you, Graham?
In a bloodbath. It's going to be awful.
I agree. South Carolina's offensive line, I don't know how they looked. I think they played Furman. I don't know how they looked.
Still struggling.
But
still struggling.
They still struggled?
I mean, it was better than against North Carolina, but they still, their leading rusher had 40-something yards.
Oh, brother.
Rattler threw for like 350. So if Rattler wasn't on this team would not make a bowl. That's just.
No, they would not. They would not. I'll say this. I have a better shot of seeing color appropriately than they have of beating Georgia this weekend. So give me the Bulldogs in this one. Then our final game that we're going to pick, always a fun matchup. Classic SEC rivalry, Tennessee versus Florida in the swamp at night. Graham, does Florida have a chance?
My gut's telling me a little bit.
Uh-oh.
But I got to trust
Not the gut.
Yeah, I got to trust my head on this one. I think it's going to be a close game because it is in the swamp at night. Florida has looked better since really having an abysmal offensive performance against Utah. I think Tennessee with Joe Milton, again, we talked about it. He's got a great arm, not always accurate. I think that when you force him to make tough throws, he makes some, he doesn't make some, and I think that'll keep Florida in the game. And so I think it's going to be a close one. I'm thinking probably like a 14-point game. So close, but not a field goal game.
I gotcha. Yeah, Tennessee struggled with Austin Peay this past weekend, and I saw a stat. I don't know where he finished at, but I believe Joe Milton was like at 5 yards per attempt at one point in that game, which, if you don't know any better, that is no bueno. That is not good at all. And the problems that we talked about preseason showed up in that game. They really showed up against Virginia. His inaccuracy leads to them being inefficient on offense. And as fast as they go, that is not a good thing, especially for their defense.
Yep.
I believe they win this game because I believe there's a major talent disparity.
Yep.
But with it being at home in the swamp, crazy things happen in this rivalry game. I think Florida kind of learned some lessons from that Utah game. Number one being get number 3, Eugene Wilson, the ball. Good lesson to learn because that kid is a playmaker and a difference maker that they don't have on that offense outside of Ricky Pearsall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they keep it close, but in the end, like you, Tennessee wins out. They just got too much talent. If they do lose this game, yikes. Big, big yikes. Or as Shaggy would say, zonks. I mean, it would not be good if they lost this game. Graham, before we head out of here, you got anything else to add, or are we ready to close up shop here tonight?
Man, I will just mention this. The game that I'm kind of going to be looking forward to this week is Kansas State at Missouri. I think that's going to be
that will be fun. Yeah,
interesting game. It's 11 o'clock kick on SEC Network. Kansas State has had some of our opponents up to this point, and like I said, I thought Missouri was kind of my sleeper team in the SEC East. That one to me will be a fun one to watch. So keep an eye on that one, especially if you're aren't really excited about the Saturday slate.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm glad you mentioned that game. I probably would take Mizzou at home. Their defense is actually really good, especially their defensive front. They got some difference makers up there, but that'll be a fun one to kick off the day with. So good call on that. And everybody, we appreciate you watching and supporting us week in and week out. You have no idea how much the compliments, the words of encouragement that you send our way mean to Graham, myself, and Chase. We really appreciate it. We enjoy doing it. And it's a great way of us staying in touch and also just talking about what we all love, which is college football. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Leave a like, leave a comment on what you believe the biggest issue Alabama is facing going forward. And Pigskin Cafe is closed for now. But until next time, chew on that.